Good morning and welcome to It's Rainmaking Time. This is Kim Greenhouse and we are live on the Radio Colorado Network. Good morning, the world. And we have great news for you today. The elimination of waste is one thing, but to convert it into an asset for humankind is a distinct phenomenon. There's a difference between a solution and a global systemic solution. Global systemic solutions are human imperatives that have an invisible window of time in which to act. And when they are not acted upon by a certain time, large-scale ramifications occur, like decay, destruction, and degeneration. But the good news of today, ladies and gentlemen, is that we have somebody here in the studio who is the founder and chairman of Startech Environmental Corporation. He has brought through a solution that will not only eliminate waste, but convert it to an asset for humankind. Please join me in welcoming the chairman, Joe Longo, to It's Rainmaking Time. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Kim. It's kind of you to have me this morning.
Well, I'll tell you, I've been working on a global systemic solution myself for 14 years. I'm very familiar with the complexity of it and the contribution of it, but I have not been quite as excited except to hear about the solution that you've already brought into the world. So let's talk about what are you doing in the elimination of waste, and what does that mean that you can eliminate waste and convert it to an asset for humankind?
Well, Kim, what we actually do is to take waste, all waste, and irreversibly destroy it, and that's terribly important, particularly with regard to hazardous and lethal materials. But in the process of irreversibly destroying, completely and irreversibly destroying the waste, we're able to convert it into a useful commodity product, principally a gas mixture that's very rich in hydrogen. And there's also some solids we can recover, metals and silicates and things of that sort, but our business is essentially focused on irreversibly destroying the troublesome materials as far safer than the prevailing environmental standards, and then converting them into materials. And you'll find I'm a little long-winded on short questions. Sometimes give rise to long answers, but it also makes money for the users. And in this world driven by numbers and economy, if it didn't make money for the users and save money, etc., it really wouldn't even be a commercial product. It would just be an
interesting idea,
capability.
Well, you have built a plasma converter, which, to my understanding from reading your material, is able to take the molecular structure and break apart the bond so that the danger is not there. Could you just explain the essence so that people who are listening can get the essence of what is occurring that's so incredible?
Yes, and if I may use some goofy analogies, I hope your audience will forgive me.
We like goofy here.
Okay, goofy's good as far as I'm concerned.
I like Tweety Bird too, but you can go ahead with the goofy.
Well, I kidded with someone. If I could have learned quantum mechanics with a pop-open Big Bird book, sniff and smell, or scratch and smell, that would be good for me. As a matter of fact, on that subject, and I'll explain the technology a bit in a moment, but one of the interesting barriers and life experience is that the fact that it was a new idea, or it is a new idea, has really had to go through a minefield. Now I'm using an analogy with barbed wire as well. There are lots of folks in the world who, while they say, yes, we like new ideas can sometimes make people very uncomfortable. So we've had to go through, and while I'm using the silliness of these Big Bird analogies, we have had to not only do the technical and commercial development, but part of that was to do the education process on the way, because on the face of it, it sounds too good to be true. And once in a while, there are some things that are too good to be true. And if this sounds like magic, it ain't. It's just good core technology. And I say to people sometime in my office, if you want to talk about magic, I'll point down to that plug in the wall with those teeny little slots, and electrons come out of that, and can drive all sorts of things. Now, that's magic to me.
Yes.
But back again, what the process does is impinge. There's an arc of electricity, a lightning-like arc of electricity in the vessel.
What vessel are you talking about? Can we go back to one thing real quick? I just want to bring you back for audiences. The part, and then I want you to finish. The part about the molecular bonds.
Yes.
And your plasma converter. I think if we could start with something that people can get on a basic scientific level, and then you come in with that, please.
What we do is we have a device in the vessel that produces an incredible amount of energy, radiant energy, that impinges, attacks, bears down on any of the material that comes into the vessel. And all of those materials are essentially, for the most part, molecular constructions, most of which are man-made. And it breaks those bonds apart because the bonds cannot sustain, they can't hold hands in the face of this enormous bit of energy pushing down on them, the so-called flux. And the bonds break apart. And so that while you could have a thing called cyanide made of carbon and nitrogen, we'll break that apart, and then we get a carbon and a nitrogen, both of which are relatively benign. As a matter of fact, both of which are necessary for life itself. So we break apart the bonds by exposing it to an intense field of radiant energy, and that's not atomic radiation or anything like that.
Is that heat energy?
Well, the answer is yes. And I'm really going to be, the goofy scientist. When you're on a beach or up on the slopes in Aspen or wherever, and you're sitting sunning yourself, you get hot. And what happens is it's the transfer of radiant energy from the sun impinging on your skin that produces an effect, a sensation of heat. Does a lot of other chemical things as well. So the transfer of energy, the derivative, one of our perceptions of the transfer of energy has to do with heat. So yeah, it's heat, but it's really the transfer of energy. I don't know if that makes any sense.
A little bit.
Well, let me try one more thing, if I may. I'm going to take you back to Aspen. After a ski day, you're sitting on the rug in front of the fireplace on the floor, and it's nice and toasty. You're getting warmed by your absorption of radiant energy. The hot gases are going up the flue, and you're not touching the anvil because that will burn your hand. But if you sit behind the sofa, it's quite cold back there because there's a barrier between you and the radiant energy, and that's the sofa. Okay. Something like that.
But the bottom line for the public, though, is that there's something that your plasma converter does that breaks apart and breaks down the problem in the molecular structure that causes the problem, that causes the danger, that causes the toxicity.
Yes.
And gets rid of that and makes it inert. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. And that's by breaking those bonds apart, what looks like a Frankenstein creature, a toxic material, might be a molecule made of a chlorine, a carbon, et cetera, fundamental elements, I mean.
Okay.
When they break apart, it's no longer the Frankenstein creature.
Very good. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you are tuning into It's Rainmaking Time. We are live on the Radio Colorado Network. We are up as well on a satellite, which we're delighted today. We're also streaming live on the Internet on Warp Radio. Thank you, Warp. And we're here with Joe Longo, who's the chairman of Startech, a company that is not only have an ability to eliminate waste, but to convert it to an asset for humankind. So, Joe, we are about getting rid of electronics or computers or equipment, toxic chemicals and pollutants that we don't need. What about, will this technology get rid of uranium or chemical weapons? Can you talk about that?
Sure. As a matter of fact, I note that you're calling from Colorado, and we have done lots of work on chemical weapons and munitions. We'll talk about radioactive waste in a moment, but not too far from Denver is a city called Pueblo, and Pueblo has a serious chemical weapons depot there that we've talked to Pueblo about using the process to irreversibly destroy those materials as compared to incinerating them, which was a dreadful process. So, yes, they will destroy the chemical weapons. As a matter of fact, again, because we're ripping the molecules apart, and ripping the molecule apart comprised of the